This is The Guardian.
Hello and welcome to The Guardian Football Weekly. It's the David Mitchell dressed as a Nazi gif. Are we the farmers? PSG get past Liverpool on penalties, and it's hard to say they didn't deserve it. Over two brilliant games of football. Desiree Doué, who was great on the night, scored the decisive penalty after Curtis Jones and Darwin Núñez missed. It's sad for Darwin that no one was surprised when he struck it at the perfect height for Donnarumma. Both sides created big chances as Mana Dembele was the only one who managed to score. Confirmation certainly that Liverpool have played someone good this season. Elsewhere last night, it was all pretty straightforward for Barca, Bayern and Inter. Lamine Yamal did some brilliant things, as did Jamal Musiala, and it was a great couple of games for Harry Kane too. And then Manchester United. You wonder if Big Sir Jim has spent too long hanging around heavy chemicals. An odd set of interviews where he claimed Man United would have run out of cash by Christmas if he hadn't sacked the tea lady, that Casemiro, Onana and Højlund aren't any good. And hang on, here's a 100,000-seater giant circus tent umbrella we'll ship in on a barge for £2 billion. But then he's a more successful businessman than almost all of us, so maybe we shouldn't be quite so cynical. Also, we'll touch on Newcastle's win at West Ham on Monday, a bit of EFL, and some more crawling to the good people of Nottingham. All that plus your questions, and that's today's Guardian Football Weekly. On the panel today, Lars Sivertsen, welcome.
Hello, Max.
Hello, Archie. Rhind-Tutt.
Hey, Max.
Ben writes, wishing Barry a very happy birthday on further inspection on celebritybirthdays.com. I was surprised to see Barry's wealth at €5 million and that his body measurements were coming soon. Stop gatekeeping this from us, Baz. Many happy returns, my friend.
Well, I hope when my body measurements come, they're as inaccurate as my reported finances. And, suitably lower. But thank you for your good wishes.
Oh, that's all right. Let's start at Anfield then. Liverpool 0, PSG 1. PSG go through 4-2 on penalties. Arne Slot said this was the best game he'd ever been involved in. I wasn't sure, Barry, if it was as exciting as the first leg, but still a great game.
I don't think it was as exciting as the first game, but it was a really good game. A game of the highest quality, played at seriously high intensity. And I think over the two legs, there can't be really any doubt that the best team went through. Liverpool started this game well. Probably should have scored in the first 20 minutes. Mo Salah had a good chance. Then later on, Jarell Quansah headed one against the inside of the post that could have gone in. But I have no ill will towards Liverpool at all. I probably shouldn't like PSG, but I'm glad PSG went through because I've really enjoyed watching them play in this year's season's Champions League. Their midfield was brilliant. Their forward players were brilliant. They totally dominated extra time. They were excellent in defence. Difficult to pick out a single PSG player who didn't have a good game last night. And as good as Alisson is as a goalkeeper, you would fancy Donnarumma to do better than him in a penalty shootout, I think. And he did. So by saving two penalties. So, fair play to PSG. I think they thoroughly deserve to go through.
Yeah, I think you're right about, it's hard to single anyone out. And I'm going to single a few out. I think kind of fitting that Desiree Doué scored the winning penalty last, because he was so good. And I think probably there are a lot of listeners that don't know a lot about him. I didn't know a lot about him. I still don't. I know he came from Rennes. He's 19. They bought him at the start of the season for €50 million. But I thought it was some performance.
Yeah, no, and I guess he is kind of emblematic of this new direction of PSG, in that instead of just signing superstars, they have finally figured out that, hey, actually, French football is one of the great sort of talent factories of the world. Maybe let's look domestically. And they signed him from Rennes after two very promising seasons there. It did cost them a fair bit of money. I think they paid like €50 million or something. So, but it's symptomatic of the direction they're going in. And they're going to have a bit of a conundrum moving forward, because that front three of Barcola, Kvaratskhelia and Dembele, that would seem to be their first choice. But Desiree Doué was fantastic when he came on. And there's some genuine squad depth there. I thought this game was better than the first leg, in the sense that the first leg had incredible drama. But this one was kind of going back and forth a little bit. Liverpool were really good for the first 10 minutes. And I posted in the group that I started thinking all those news stories after the first leg about how the PSG squad were shocked at how bad Liverpool were, and then the first 10 minutes of this game go the way they do. I thought, oh well, here we go. It's like you can change the players, but you can't take the hubris out of PSG. But of course they managed to stay in it. A couple of great saves by Donnarumma, and I guess that's the whole point, is that they did show a kind of resilience that we haven't really seen from them before. It used to be an almost annual thing. I used to pray that I would get the post PSG European bottle job episode of Football Weekly, because coming on and sniggering at them with you guys used to be so much fun. But there does seem to be, even though it's a much younger and less experienced group, there seems to be much more grit in this group of players. And I want to flag up another player who's very un-PSG, which is the defender Pacho, who they signed from Frankfurt, am I right? Who's, again, a very non-showy. Like, the PSG of 5 years ago would not have gone, we need a new centre-half, let's go and get a guy from Frankfurt. That's just not what would have happened. But they seem to be now recruiting players who are very good rather than players who are just very famous. And it turns out that is a good approach to building a football team.
I think Donnarumma deserves extra credit for the way that he's come back this season as well, because there was a time in November where he was so out of form that he was replaced by Matvei Safonov in goal for the Bayern game, and the repeated blunders were raising questions about his future at the club. And he's come back in January. He had a big performance away at Brest, I think it was. On top of that, through the game, I thought he was very solid. And yeah, at penalties, as the England fan in you knows, Max, he's quite good. And even though, yes, Darwin's penalty was at a comfortable height, he was so on top of it, and the way that he clawed the one from Curtis Jones out, you don't see as many, I think, good penalty savers as I'd maybe expect sometimes. So it is a real talent, and we always come back to fine margins. I think having a goalkeeper of this class is something that, we saw what a difference it can make in Paris, and you saw again last night what kind of a difference that can make too.
Yeah. I heard on the radio somebody saying about Donnarumma that he doesn't make himself big because he's enormous. He sort of stays quite tiny, like a little turtle, and then just as they put a ball on the spot, he sort of opens his, that dinosaur in Jurassic Park, when the guy is like with his glasses and then suddenly goes, vroom, and his whole head just appears, and you're like, oh shit, this guy's a big old dude, isn't he? Look, you mentioned that Darwin penalty, and I wonder, Baz, it just felt like, it's so easy to construct the narrative after he misses the penalty, but he does miss the penalty, and you think, would you put him up third? Like, is that the best thing to do, or is that just, the randomness of penalty shootouts?
I don't think penalty shootouts are random, but I had no confidence that he would score, and I would imagine I was not alone in having little or no confidence in him. I felt for the guy. He looked heartbroken afterwards. He can't do right for doing wrong for Liverpool, it seems. And I think there is an element of Liverpool's support who kind of lost patience with him and want him gone. I like what he brings to the party. And let's not forget, they are going to win the league. They might win the Carabao Cup. It's not this isn't a disaster for them. But he looked so sad when he was hunkered down after missing his penalty. And I think, he might even think, it's not going to happen for me here. Maybe I should go somewhere else. But we'll see what happens in the summer. I'd have no problem with him staying. I'd say quite a lot of Liverpool fans would have no problem with him staying, and some want him out.
He also had a bit of a shocker before even the penalty, and we got to be a little bit careful, because we, and by we I mean I, was praising him last week for just adding physicality and an element of chaos to the Liverpool attack that ultimately made a bit of a difference in the first leg. The goal comes from his physical sort of thing up front. But in this game, he just seemed like he was on completely the wrong frequency to all the players around him, like making runs that didn't make sense and not. So there is sometimes it's useful and productive chaos, but sometimes it's just chaos and bad chaos. And I felt like it was definitely more of the second. And I do wonder as Liverpool want to sort of develop further under Arne Slot, is if having this player who is just a complete coin toss when you throw him on there, like if he's going to get anything useful out of him or if it's just going to be disruptive and chaotic, maybe that is not super useful.
Back to PSG, Archie, because it's just worth mentioning that midfield, isn't it? Because João Neves is incredibly young. Vitinha, whose penalty was, it took half an hour. It's just incredible how slowly that went in. But those two were just brilliant. And, we've seen Liverpool's midfield be brilliant all season. And in 2 games, and you're right, this was a closer contest than the first leg, but we've seen them be brilliant in 2 games.
Yeah, and Vitinha as well has such a range and tempo to his passing, and the way he's able to just set the tone for a game. Top sides throughout history seem to have players of that ilk, and I think he is continually proving that, even with the penalty where he's saying, I can roll this ball in at whatever pace I want and it will still go in, is something of a statement of the form that he's in right now. And this game also just threw up the thing for me about how some teams are able to just time their form correctly in a season, and how I remember the conversations that have been had about Liverpool and how they had this perfect record in the Champions League until the final group game, and seeing it with other teams as well. We'll come to Bayern eventually, but PSG did not look this good when they went to Bayern earlier in the competition, or indeed when they were losing to Atletico Madrid. All the same questions were being thrown up of, this is it going to happen again? Let's not forget that this PSG team could have gone out on the final on the final group stage match day had they lost at Stuttgart, and instead they turned in a fantastic performance, and now they are, I think, when you knock out this Liverpool team, you are riding well into favourites territory. Which is the exact place that PSG don't want to be. I think PSG want to continue flying under the radar a little bit and taking expectations off. And the fact that they could be facing a former coach in Unai Emery next round, should Villa complete the job against Bruges, I think adds a little bit more spice to it, and seeing if they can, get past somebody who will plan to the nth degree, and it'll be a very different kind of game to what they faced against Liverpool. I think it would suit Villa as well, actually, to not play Liverpool, to have, I think sometimes actually playing a team from your own country can screw with your head a bit.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think actually Slot was kind of right, Baz, wasn't he? That it's pretty unlucky to win this group and then come up against PSG, who have hit this form.
Yeah, it is.
And, and actually in this game, Quansah hits the post. I know the offside flag went off, but it shouldn't have done, and it would have counted. Gomez blocks that Salah one early on. Like, Liverpool had real opportunities in this game too.
Yeah, they did, but they didn't take them. And whether that's down to bad luck or inefficiency is sort of irrelevant. And they were unlucky to get a team hitting form like this. But that's again, it's just bad luck. One thing I noticed, actually, probably others did as well, but in the penalty shootout, PSG appeared to have the decision over which end the penalties were taken in, and they also took the first one, which seems strange. Because
no, I think there are normally 2 tosses. There are 2 coin tosses.
Is it right? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh well, I apologize.
But actually, that's all right. Mark came up with a question, which is sort of, it doesn't seem right, does it? There should be 2. You sort of think there should be 1, and then that captain chooses whether to go first or have the end, and so it doesn't.
Yeah,
because it's so unbalanced, isn't it? Because PSG had a guy with a megaphone, didn't they? Who was also shouting when Dembele went out to take his penalty, which I thought seemed a bit silly. And that was some penalty, wasn't it? The only other note I had from this game was there was one shot, Lars, from Kvaratskhelia that I'd never thought the phrase "whistled over the bar" was more accurate for a strike. It sort of made me go oof, like a cartoon. It was so good.
Yeah, I was, as I always am, on Kvaratskhelia watching. It wasn't his best game, but he had 2 shooting chances. One, which was incredibly well blocked. Was it by Gravenberch or someone? It was someone who got a little deflection in there, which I thought that one probably would have gone in. And the second one just got away from him a tiny bit, so he left it over. over the bar. It's not his most active night, but he put a good shift in, which is a big difference between him and the superstars that have come before him at PSG. I want to flag up again Luis Enrique for doing a great job shaping this team and molding this team. And I don't think he's the only one who's made this decision of them going no superstars, let's go young and dynamic instead. But he's certainly the right person to marshal that direction. And I think his in-game substitutions really worked. I thought this game was kind of getting away from PSG a little bit. Liverpool had the upper hand in the second half. But when they brought on, maybe we mentioned Desiree Doué, who was fantastic when he came on, but I also thought like Zaire Emery made an impact in midfield. Lee Kang-in so they just kind of got back control over the game, and it was all PSG really in the extra time. I mean, they could have found a winner there. So I thought the management of the game and the way it went worked out really well for Luis Enrique also.
And actually, Liverpool, Trent Alexander-Arnold might have taken a knock. Konate possibly. They played 120 minutes, and like you're right, Barry, they're going to win the league. They could win the Carabao Cup because Newcastle are missing Lewis Hall and Botman and Anthony Gordon as well. But them being tired might make a bit of a difference to the Carabao Cup final. Anyway, well done to PSG. Deservedly through, and they, as we suggested, will play Villa or Bruges in the next quarterfinal, and then potentially Real Madrid or Atleti, or two other teams that I can't think of in my immediate.
Arsenal.
Oh, there we go. Or Arsenal or PSV, Barry.
I'm going to say not even Arsenal can balls this one up.
Anyway, that'll do for part one. Part two, we'll run at the rest of the Champions League. Welcome to part two of the Guardian Football Weekly. Barcelona beat Benfica 3-1, 4-1 on aggregate. Benfica will feel it was the first leg when they played against 10 men for so long, where this game got away from them. Is Lamine Yamal so good, Lars, that we believe he meant that assist to Rafinha? I'm saying mishit shot, but he is awfully good for a 17-year-old, so maybe it was a pass.
I kind of thought he meant it, but Glenn Hoddle was pretty adamant that he didn't, and Glenn Hoddle knows more about this stuff than I do, so I don't know. I thought he meant it. Looked to me like he meant it, and also just the way he went past two players before that, just kind of sending two. I love it when you can send two players the wrong way in the same motion. It's not ideal for the defenders, but it's always a great look when that happens. And he was incredible, and he is the heir to the Arjen Robben throne of like. Everyone knows what he's about to attempt, but he's just going to do it anyway. Because his goal was, I swear to God, I'm sure that I think there were people sat up in the International Space Station looking down who can tell, oh yeah, he's going to cut inside and he's going to try to put it in the far corner. Like, it was so obvious that this is what he was going to do, but it wasn't possible to stop him. It was absolutely incredible. And just overall, the first half of this game was really fun, even though it was slightly one way, but just the quality of Rafinha, of Yamal, of Pedri and De Jong. I mean, just the way they moved the ball, the pace of it was really good. It was quite scary from Barcelona.
Yeah. Was producer Joel right? Was Messi this good at 17? I mean, it feels ludicrous because you just don't know how a career will go, Archie, do you? And like Lamine Yamal is 17, he might be done at 19, but like if he plays for 20 years, like. When we're doing Football Weekly, and Barry's 72, on his 72nd birthday, we'll be like, I can't believe Yamal is still going.
I think the danger, even more so now, of extrapolating is the amount of games that he's going to be made to play. It would be my question mark over how good he might be. Everything about him screams superstar. So I just hope that...
wrap him in cotton wool is what you're trying to say, isn't it?
Exactly. Because he's just one of those players that when he gets the ball, you're like, okay, what are you going to do? Oh, that is pretty special. Fair play, mate. So yeah, a complete joy to watch, and just for somebody as well, like to be even in the conversation to be in the shoe of filling Messi's shoes. And to have that quality as a teenager and to be able to continually live up to that hype as well is something really special to see.
We always do this, and I include myself and everyone in the media. When a young player does something really good, I wish we would just celebrate and praise the thing they're doing rather than immediately go to how good can he become. Because what we're doing then is that we're setting an artificial bar for that player to either clear or not clear. Like, Lamine Yamal is already amazingly good. Like, he's one of the most impactful forwards in the world at this point. And I feel like the comparisons to Messi is kind of, because then if people say that often enough, you reach a situation where, well, if he doesn't become the best player who's ever lived, then that'll be a disappointment somehow, which is silly. Like, we should, I wish we would stop doing this.
Are you suggesting I shouldn't have extrapolated to 2045 to see how Lamine Yamal is about 5 minutes ago? Look, the other player, Barry, is Rafinha, who isn't 17, but he scored his 26th of the season. He's got 10 goals and 4 assists in the Champions League this season, the most goals and assists by a Barcelona player in one season since, I'm sorry to say, Lars, Lionel Messi in 2018, 2019. I was reading somewhere that, like his career arc is very different. And he's playing obviously he scored that brilliant goal in the first leg as well.
Yeah, he's been outstanding. We discussed last week that he should be in the Ballon d'Or conversation, but probably won't be. Although presumably by conversing about that, we are putting him in the conversation, and we have a lot of clout when it comes to the Ballon d'Or.
Well, we do.
Yeah, and the fact that he wasn't wanted at Barcelona, he's only there under sufferance, but he didn't let that bother him. He's made the most of this opportunity he's got, and is playing brilliantly. I give a shout out to Pedri as well, old man Pedri, he was brilliant last night, I thought, as well. What age is he now? He
22.
22, yeah. Because he had a rough trot of it with injuries, but he's hitting his stride again and becoming the player that we knew he would be. But yeah, Rafinha just seems to be loving life there on the left wing for Barca. He's a completely different player to Lamine Yamal as well, I think. They're a pleasure to watch.
And it's funny because it's an open sequence, not even open. It's everyone knows that Barcelona wanted to bring in Nico Williams, right? Now, most likely they would have tried to sell Rafinha to finance that deal, and if they'd kept him at the club, he certainly wouldn't be playing a lot if Nico Williams was on that flank. But they weren't able to do it, and Rafinha has responded by having this incredible season. He's got 11 goals in the Champions League so far, 13 goals and 7 assists in the Liga. So Barcelona have kind of accidentally stumbled upon a great solution. I mean, it seems to be a good connection between him and Lamine Yamal. Like, it's working very well. So I guess they can thank their really terrible financial situation for the fact that they have Rafinha doing this stuff as he is this season.
Someone high up just backed into the wrong lever, and it meant that Rafinha stayed, didn't it? Let's go to Leverkusen Bayern. Bayern won 2-0. Harry Kane and Alphonso Davies with the goals in the second half. Archie, you were there. Did you have a nice time?
I did, mainly because my producer from England delivered 7 packs of scampi fries to me that I obviously can't get in Germany. So I'm going to...
Right. Oh, okay. Not just for the night.
No, I'm not.
Keep you going for a while. I was going to say that's quite a salty evening for you.
Very right. And speaking of salty evenings, Bayer Leverkusen were in the end left high and dry. I would say that this game, as Xabi Alonso put it, was very much lost at the Allianz Arena last week. And on top of that, at the weekend, it's been a truly terrible week for Leverkusen in the context of their rivalry with Bayern, because they lost 2-0 at home to Werder Bremen, but bigger than that, and what I think had also a very big bearing on this game, was the ankle ligament injury suffered by Florian Wirtz at the hands of a former Bayern player, Mitchell Weiser, going in a little bit late. The fact that Wirtz was hobbling off and was out of the stadium on crutches told you the story of, I think this game might be toast. And the fact that Bayern lost to Bochum on Saturday as well meant that Leverkusen could have closed the gap at the top of the Bundesliga to 5 points. And instead it stayed at 8. And yeah, Bayern are growing into, they're doing this thing of timing their season well. Before, in the last few seasons, I think Bayern always blowing teams out the water in the first part of a Champions League campaign and coming up short later on, even though, yes, they did reach the semi-finals last season in a very haphazard manner of the way that their season went, finishing third in the Bundesliga, for example. But yeah, Harry Kane performing in big games, which has been something that could be levelled at him before, and stepping up and doing, I think, just being in the right place at the right time, which is his job. And yeah, Bayern as a structure, I think there's still something to be said about their efficiency in front of goal and their creation of chances. But for them to put away Leverkusen, who had not lost a game under Xabi Alonso to Bayern, and with the final being in Munich, and that Leverkusen had the chance to take that away from them, it's a big statement, because they were actually written off by quite a few pundits in Germany ahead of this one. But like the Arsenal game showed last year, it's a bit naive, I think, to write off Bayern Munich in a Champions League tie.
Archie, can I ask you, like a month ago, Bayern went to Leverkusen and were really bad, and were very lucky to get out of there with a 0-0 draw. And Leverkusen looked a much more accomplished team. And now this was kind of easy over two legs in both games. Especially in the first one, they were kind of cruising. Is there a sense in Germany that something's changed with this team, that something's fallen into place? I mean, what has changed in that month?
I think that having Alphonso Davies back in the team, and for the way that they want to play with such physicality and intensity, they really missed him for that 0-0 draw. And you saw it whenever Frimpong wanted to get in behind last night, that sure, Jeremy Frimpong is quick, but Alphonso Davies is on his level of being quick. And I think that made a big impact. There were just big mistakes in Munich. The fact, like, Xabi Alonso has rotated his goalkeepers a lot. I think it's 13 times in the last 15 games. This is just the way that he wants to do it. But I don't think that Matej Kovac is as good as Lukas Radetzky. He paid the price for that. He paid the price for not taking off Nori Mukiele at half-time last week. And I thought it was quite pointed that Konrad Laimer had a yellow card last night. Half-time he was hooked for Josip Stanisic. There is also just a part of it being gravity. Bayern Munich are still have a squad which is paid twice as much as Leverkusen's, and that over the course of 7 or 8 games, the odds are you will probably not win all of them or not remain undefeated.
Do you think there's any part of Xabi Alonso who's thinking he should have jumped at the end of last season? Or he's just waiting for Real Madrid?
No, yeah.
Oh, sorry, that's disingenuous he's at Leverkusen being a Leverkusen manager, but you take my point.
He is, and he's still doing a job that is far exceeding expectations. They remain in the DFB Cup at the expense of Bayern Munich, having won at the Allianz Arena earlier this season in that competition. And look, you have to think about where Leverkusen are coming from, and that before last season, they finished in the top 2 once, since that 2002 season where they finished second in the Champions League, the Cup, and in the Bundesliga. And he has propelled them to new heights. And last season, they overachieved. And this season, they are still probably overachieving. It's just that, yeah, I think when you come down from the highest of highs that they had last season, a friend of mine said to me that they probably could have done with losing a few more games last season to actually prepare them for this one. Because even before last night, in the last 2 games, they've spent more time trailing in games than they had in the entirety of this season. They're not used to being behind. They're not used to having to scrap. And it can probably help you at times to just have a little bit more knowledge of how to navigate those kind of situations.
Quickly on, well, a couple of things I want to ask. Harry Kane, first English player to score 10 goals in a single European Cup Champions League campaign. and looks lovely with Musiala. And Musiala's just a total joy, isn't he? And Elise there as well. Just wonder, Barry, if he's gone up in your estimations a tiny bit,
Harry Kane.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say he's low in my estimation.
Okay.
I mean, the thing about him being not delivering in big games, that's tended to be because he's been injured in those games rather than just not deliver. There is a reason for it.
Sure.
I think Harry Kane's a terrific player. He was brilliant last night. Scored one, created one, should have had a penalty. Yeah, Musiala was great too. Hit the post, hit the bar. If he'd hit the other post, he'd got to keep the goal frame, bring it home with him.
The Troy Townsend hat trick.
Yeah. No shots on target, woodwork hit twice. Yeah, pick the bones out of that. But no, I think you're overestimating my lack of regard for Harry Kane.
I take it back. I also liked the child in goal for Bayern Munich, who looks very much like he was created out of a piece of Manuel Neuer, and then grown in a laboratory. I'm going to move on to Inter Feyenoord. Inter go through 4-1 on aggregate. They won this game 2-1. Marcus Thuram scored a lovely goal, didn't he, Lars? And almost got a better one in the second half as well.
No, he's had a good couple of ties here. He scored a lovely goal in the first leg as well. This was, I have to admit, I did not track this game very, very closely, and it just kind of went almost exactly the way you kind of would expect it to go. Feyenoord did make a fist of it. They did have some chances, but as we saw in the first leg, Inter are very happy to sit back and kind of absorb that pressure. And then they have some real threats on the break, and there's a lot of experience and know-how in this team. And they, it wasn't very complicated for them. They got through it okay. And they're a funny one, Inter, because they're not as convincing as a few of the other teams in this tournament. You look at the way Barcelona absolutely, took Benfica to the cleaners in the first half. The way Bayern can be at their best, not to mention PSG, of course. But again, Inter are kind of they got to the final not that long ago for a reason, and Simeone Inzaghi has had that team for a long time. They're very well drilled. Again, there's a lot of experience there. Less spectacular, but certainly not a team you'd want to take lightly. And it was just a bridge too far for Feyenoord, I think, to do anything much here.
Inter have only conceded 2 goals in 10 games in this competition so far. They're going to take some beating, I reckon.
Yeah, Bayern Inter up next. We'll do more on Inter, of course, next time Nicky is on. That'll do for part 2. Part 3, we will discuss big Sir Jim Ratcliffe talking to lots of people and not necessarily making complete sense. Welcome to part 3 of the Guardian Football Weekly. So, big Sir Jim Ratcliffe did an interview for the BBC. He did one for Gary Neville's Overlap. I think he did a few other ones. Picked out a few things.
The Times, the Telegraph, the Guardian weren't invited.
Oh, interesting. On the finances, he said the club would have been bankrupt by Christmas last year if they hadn't introduced cost-cutting measures. Manchester United would have run out of cash by the end of this year, by the end of 2025, after having me put $300 million in, £232 million, by the way. And if we buy no new players in the summer, we're in the process of change. It's an uncomfortable period and disruptive, and I do feel sympathy with the fans. The simple answer is the club runs out of money at Christmas if we don't do those things. He then said he wanted Manchester United to be the most profitable club in the next 3 years. Then he announced the new stadium. We'll get to that. I did message Kieran Maguire because this whole thing has confused me, and he said, quote, "It's disingenuous drivel from offshore Jim." I did say, can I quote you? And he said, yes, the club had 97 million cash in the bank at the 31st of December. So that disproves his first claim. It could become profitable if prices core fans out of the game and targets the corporate hospitality and experience market. The running out of cash claim is simply to justify the redundancy decision and removal of staff benefits. He's not used to criticism and scrutiny. And it does, I mean, we'll get to other stuff, but I don't know why, Barry, that first thing, and I would trust Kieran on this, it just seems ridiculous to say it out loud if it isn't true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad you texted Kieran because he's confirmed, I think, what most of us thought. There's simply no evidence to back up the claim that United were going to run out of money if they didn't stop giving people free lunch and sack some, receptionists. So that's not true. It was just his interviews have been weird. He at times claimed not to know the full scale of United's fiscal problems. A baffling admission from a man who, you would expect to do his due diligence before investing in the club. So is he pretending he doesn't know, or does he actually not know? Neither is particularly good. He listed all these various reasons why Manchester United are in financial trouble, but wouldn't come close to citing the obvious one, the big American-shaped elephant in the room. I get why he can't publicly criticise the Glazers, and I got the feeling when he was chatting to Gary Neville that he wanted to but wasn't going to. Gary Neville gave him every opportunity to do that. He's clearly a very successful businessman who knows far more about the world of high finance than I am, or than I do, but he did not come across well in these interviews. And I wonder, in better run clubs, when's the last time you saw Tony Bloom give an interview, Brighton owner? When's the last time you saw Matthew Benham at Brentford do an interview? They rarely speak publicly. You might hear from Tony Bloom this week if he has a winner at Cheltenham, but otherwise he just keeps his mouth shut and gets on with things.
Well, actually, you don't hear from badly run club owners either, as it goes.
Well, yeah.
On current players, Lars, he said, if you look at the players we're buying this summer that we didn't buy, we're buying Anthony, we're buying Casemiro, we're buying Onana, we're buying Højlund, we're buying Sancho. These are all things from the past. Whether we like it or not, we've inherited those things and have to sort that out. Now, I don't know how smart it is for the owner to mention three players that are playing quite a lot of the time at the moment.
Yeah, so I gently disagree with Barry in the sense that I think it's not a bad idea for club owners to come out and speak occasionally, though that doesn't, completely insulate them from criticism of the things that do come out of their mouths. But I would like to see owners, because in specifically in English football, in other countries you hear from the president, you hear from the sporting director. In England, it's all dumped on the manager, and the manager is often not in charge of a lot of things, but he ends up being the only public face of this stuff. So I don't hate the fact that he is prepared to take interviews, but you have to then acknowledge that some of the things he says doesn't make sense. The fact, I mean, even if it isn't disingenuous drivel as Gary Maguire suggests, even if it was completely true that United were on the verge of running out of cash, that makes it really hard to explain why they racked up a net spend of 140 million euros in the summer, overseen by a head coach that was on a very weak mandate. That would be a completely bizarre decision. We spent 140 million on players, but it turns out we need to sack some tea ladies. If not, the club's going to run out of cash. This is just stupid. This doesn't make any sense. And you're right to point out his decision to essentially throw several first-team players under the bus, one of which is a 22-year-old forward who's clearly desperately struggling for confidence. That's very bad leadership, first of all, and it's just quite shitty on a human level. It doesn't make him look like a particularly nice guy. Maybe this is why he's never had any free lunches. Maybe people don't want to take him to lunch. This is another thing. He mentioned quite a lot that he's never had a free lunch, which I also don't think is true. I think someone who makes this much money in business ends up getting many free lunches here and there, but he insists he hasn't had them. But yeah, throwing this useful current first team players under the bus to try to shield himself for criticism for the financial state the club is in. Terrible leadership, and something, I must say, which does not correspond very well with the Ineos compass, which I've been looking at all morning.
Well, the Ineos compass, just for listeners who don't know, because they may not, is it's on the Ineos website. They have a compass. Basically a circle, I think we can call it. You can call it a compass if you want. On the top is words we like. On the bottom, it's words we don't like. Words we like include skepticism, which I think is lucky. Words we like are beer, listeners, intellect, doers, growth, stamina, substance over style, work hard, play hard. Words we don't like.
Clean your own coffee cup.
Words we
That's
don't
a good
like.
one, actually.
Yeah.
You've forgotten the most important one.
Yeah, it's true.
Northerners.
Northerners, yeah, words we like. Northerners. Do the right thing, which is probably presumably what they said when they were, sacking Doris, who'd been there for 50 years, which is, we're doing the right thing. Doris, words we don't like: gloating, wafflers, quitters, moaners, clock watchers, wasting time. Actually, that's just so great, isn't it? Next time United are 1-0 up in the 95th minute. Yeah.
Quite a few of the words we don't like can be directly applied to Jim Ratcliffe, which I think is quite funny.
It's bad news, I think, that BS is under words we don't like after this round of interviews.
Bullies, boring wafflers, entitlement.
Winging it.
I also notice he really doesn't like turf wars or politics, which again, given how the Dan Ashworth situation went down, again, they hired a sporting director who they chased for months and who Sir Jim Ratcliffe said was world-class, I think, at one point, and then only to fire him a couple of months later because, according to Jim Ratcliffe, chemistry. Now that cost him £4 million. That seems, again, in the realm where we're having to fire staff and take away their lunches to avoid going bankrupt, seems like an expensive mistake. And to me, seems like both turf wars and or politics, which are words we don't like.
I've just noticed in words we like, just on the right, at 3:00 is the word banter. So, I mean, come on. This is just amazing. I literally could stare at this for the rest of my life.
Well, we like or we don't like banter. Do we like it or do we not? We do like banter.
We like it. Yeah.
This whole interview, and I listened to 40 minutes of him waffle on, and it just presented...
Which is a word we don't like.
It presented to me the dichotomy of football in right now, which is... I love this game so much, and then I get to stare into the very dark heart of the people running it, and how out of touch that they are, and how when Gary Neville suggests what you think is a pretty routine idea of how to fund £40,000 for the Ex-Players Association who played for the club in the 60s and 70s, and how dumbstruck Jim Ratcliffe looks at being like, oh, that's a really good idea. It's so sad. It's so sad with the, up upon my ticket price horse I go. That's the point I'll choose to make on top of this, which is, he goes, we're talking about 500 tickets of 75,000 here. If I've learned one thing from being in Germany, it is you need to get on top of people as soon as they start rising the prices, because it all begins by stealth. That's how Sir Jim made his money. That's how it's done. It's done incrementally, bit by bit. And if you don't fight back, then suddenly another 500 tickets have gone up.
Well, maybe the ticket prices will go down when they open their 100,000 seater stadium. Matt says, are Spurs supporters going to be annoyed that they will no longer have the most spectacular stadium in which to watch the home team lose to Crystal Palace? Many people asking, as Ryan did, is Man United moving to a giant circus tent a bit too on the nose? Okay, so the day after all the interviews for the timeline, Manchester United then announced these plans to build the biggest stadium in the UK, an iconic £2 billion, 100,000 seated ground close to Old Trafford. The architects at Foster and Partners said the stadium would feature an umbrella design and a new public plaza that is twice the size of Trafalgar Square. It will form a part of a wider regeneration of the Old Trafford area, which is a good thing, predicted to be the biggest such project in the UK since the transformation of Stratford with the 2012 Olympics. Apparently it'll mean 92,000 jobs, 17,000 new homes, an additional 1.8 million visitors to the area annually, could be worth an additional £7.3 billion per year to the UK economy. I presume boffins have worked out these numbers. Our current stadium has served us brilliantly for the past 115 years, but has fallen behind the arenas in world sport. I think we may well finish up with the most iconic stadium in the world, said Jim Ratcliffe. A new place for Manchester United to play football, or a revamped Old Trafford or a new Trafford, is a good idea, Barry. And if the numbers all stack up, great. It just seems really weird to announce this the day after all those interviews.
Well, it's not weird at all. It was all carefully orchestrated, one imagines.
Yes, sorry, but it's so obvious. It's so obvious.
Oh, right, sorry.
It can't be, it's not that carefully orchestrated. Do you know what I mean? It's like,
Yeah, I mean, it's ostensibly a plea for government money, isn't it? So he said, we'll pay for the stadium, but it will require a lot of infrastructure, which we would expect the government to pay for, and then I will profit from personally. It seems quite an ambitious project for a club that was apparently going to be scrabbling around the back of the sofa for spare change as recently as 3 months ago. But it looks like a good plan. Old Trafford it's fit for purpose, but not as nowhere near as fit for purpose as it should be. But it will be interesting to see what the government reaction is to this wheeze of Jim's.
It screams to me, we're not evil, but do have a look at our evil HQ here. It looks like what happens if you type into ChatGPT, what would the Eye of Sauron look like, but in 2050? It looks like there are the capabilities to laser people out of the stadium if there's any dissent. I just looked aside. I mean, and also, it's sunny. Come on. That's the biggest piss take here.
Well, that's, if we're being, like, vaguely positive about anything, I do think, like, this idea of designing this stadium with having a very large public area that's covered by something is actually a good idea. Like, having been outside Old Trafford in the rain many times, I think that seems like progress for humanity. But I do take it back to the Ineos Compass yet again, where it says that they don't like fancy slides. We have an innate suspicion of fancy slides. We worry about the shallowness behind them. And that was the only thing I could really think of watching this presentation video, which might be the fanciest slide I've ever seen. I was also slightly troubled by Lord Foster, isn't he? Saying this would be arguably the biggest public space in the world, which I think is not very, they're not even remotely true. I mean, you can start looking at I started looking at the list of city squares by size, and I come up with like the Shanghai Square in Dalian, China, which is 1.7 thousand square meters large. I think that is, but also you can take it further. I mean, are you aware that in the Nordic countries, all nature areas are considered a public space? We have a law that it's a law of free passage, so really all nature in the Nordic region is a public space.
There is a fjord bigger. There's a fjord bigger.
Well, like the Hardanger Plateau, the Hardangervidda, which is part of southern Norway where people go hiking. It's the sort of 3,000 square kilometers, I think, thereabouts. Probably bigger than the space outside of New Trafford. I'm not entirely sure. But so again, this claim they're going to have arguably the largest public space in the world, that falls under BS again on the Ineos Compass, I have to say. I think the big Sir Jim needs to have a word with his lead architect there.
Anyway, we shall see in the fullness of time. Won't we? By the time Lamine Yamal has passed Messi's record, Man United will be winning the Premier League with 100,000 happy fans underneath that big umbrella. In the Premier League on Monday night, Barry, Newcastle won 1-0 at West Ham. I thought it was not a terrible football match. Monday night football can get forgotten, and both sides contributed.
Yeah, it was okay. I think Newcastle probably deserved to win. Alphonse Areola had a busy night, made a couple of very good saves, one of them bordering on miraculous when he clawed away a deflection off Max Gilman. Bruno Guimaraes prodded home the goal from a Harvey Barnes cross. I think Newcastle deserved to win, but West Ham will feel they should have had a penalty for a blatant shove in Jared Bowen's back by Bruno, which went unpunished. But I don't think West Ham could have too many complaints.
Archie, would you like a Fulham minute?
Yeah, sure. I was going to say I was at Sam Fender on Monday night in Cologne, and when Bruno Guimaraes scored, just heard in between one of the songs someone yell out 1-0 Bruno, and kind of a cheer went up from I'd say a portion of the crowd. Fulham are in the quarterfinals of the FA Cup, which is nice, and managing to beat Manchester United with our worst performance against them this season. Things are looking up. We've not beaten Crystal Palace at home in 20 years. In fact, the last time we did, my mum took me to the game, and she doesn't like football, and I've been thinking about trying to force her to go.
Right.
But the problem is the game falls on her birthday. So
come on, Mama Rhind-Tutt.
No, I don't think that's going to encourage her. So yeah, let's see.
Okay. Oh, that's quite a nice unplanned minute that you gave us, but I enjoyed it. Bit of EFL last night. Phil says Dirty Luton finally show some fight. Can we stay up? Yeah, big win for them over relegation rivals Cardiff. They're now 2 points from safety. Derby, a point from safety after their win over Frank Lampard's Coventry, which was a bit of an upset. Burnley drew 1-1 with West Brom. A win could have put them in the automatic positions, but Sheffield United went top with victory over Bristol City. Birmingham are strolling it in League One. They beat Stevenage 2-1. I'm reliably informed by Sani Rajavajala that the ref had a word with the Stevenage keeper for time wasting after 7 minutes, which is nice. Cambridge went 1-0 up after 3 minutes at Blackpool with an amazing air kick from a Blackpool centre-back. But sadly, we let in 2 goals and we lost. And it's looking quite difficult for us in the Neil Harris revolution. Now, after Johnny Lou questioned the cultural contributions of the city of Nottingham, we got the following comment on Spotify from Liam, among a few emails. Shane Meadows is from Utoxeter. Things from Nottingham include lace, the inventor of the MRI scanner, boots, as in boots. I don't know if he means Boots the chemist or just boots. Stuart Broad, England's oldest pub, D.H. Lawrence, Luddites, the Flying Bedstead, H.P. Sauce, Tarmac, William Booth, the founder of the Salvation Army, Paul Smith, Torval and Dean, shin pads, gold nets, crossbars, ibuprofen. Without those 4 things, then Sunday League couldn't exist. Alan Silito, whoever he may be, and rally bikes. So there we go.
You had me at HR Sauce.
HP Sauce. Or HR sauce.
Sorry, HP sauce.
HR sauce sounds very much like something that's a big Sir Jim would use, isn't it? Just pour some HR sauce on those employees. We'll get rid of them. Anyway, lovely stuff. That'll do for today. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, Lars.
Thank you, Max.
Thank you, Archie.
If you can't be good, be lucky, Max.
Okay. Straight from the compass. Thank you, Barry. Have a wonderful birthday.
Oh, thank you. Yes, my birthday involves talking about football, writing about football, watching football, and walking 2 dogs, who I can't walk at the same time.
Right.
So
because they don't like each other?
It's not going to be one of the more... if anything, Max, they like each other a bit too much.
Right, I see. An only fans dog walk for them. Anyway, Football Weekly is produced by Joel Grove. Our executive producer is Danielle Stevens. We'll be back tomorrow.
This is The Guardian.